Hey, IAs, welcome to the Adjuster Talk podcast. This podcast is powered by Royal Adjusting. And if you're a new, aspiring, or veteran property adjuster, head over to royaladjustingservices.com and get on their roster for work opportunities. And who knows, you might even get to talk with Jason Heenan himself, but don't count on it. So welcome to the Adjuster Talk podcast by IA Path. I'm your co-host, Chris Stanley, and we're joined by the founder of this podcast, the legendary co-host now, Jason Heenan. And each week we bring a panel together and we talk about the big questions and topics that independent adjusters like you face when getting started or when you're growing your career. Jason, thanks for taking the time out to be here. I know you're a busy man with a company. How is Royal Adjusting right now? Are you guys good? Or you just have so much time on your hands, you just want to hang out?
Oh gosh, Chris, you know what? My schedule is no different from yours. You have to get on it a few weeks in advance, but the business is great. We had one of our top 3 weeks this week. We measure our cycle time and production and meet every week about it, talk about things. And I would have to say that just with the pool of talented adjusters we have and the managers and trainers, couldn't be more excited to be in business this year, Chris.
That's awesome. And he's totally lying about my calendar. For those who don't know, I just block off most of my calendar. That's why I can't get on it for 2-3 weeks because I'm traveling and doing something fun. So let's just break that myth right here, right now, here on the Adjuster Talk podcast. My calendar is empty most of the time on purpose so I could run this business. Okay. Today, we're going to talk about something really cool. We're going to talk about how to be ready for hurricane season. We scratched that stupid episode and saved it in the bank. And we're going to talk about hurricane season because it's claim time. It is time to be ready for hurricanes. And so to talk about it, the panel today is Brad Fancher. He's the auto and heavy equipment instructor at IA Path. He's our director of training. Hopefully he knows something about hurricanes. We're about to find out today. TJ, Tinecia Johnson is our desk adjusting specialist at IA Path, and she leads our liability. Hopefully one day our auto total loss and workers comp and bodily injury programs. That's my hoping, and I'm planting it in her brain right here, right now. But auto total loss, guess what? Huge during hurricane season. So I think she'll have a lot to say about that. And then we're also joined by AdjusterTV's Matthew Allen, who I think has a little bit of experience with hurricanes. So today we want you to leave confident in what you need to do to get ready for hurricane season in 2022, 2023 and beyond, because hurricanes are a big deal in claims. And it's probably why you even thought about getting started in this industry. So as with every episode, we have an icebreaker question. And because I have the wrong script in front of me, I'm going to hold up my phone like a nerd and read off of my calendar here, the icebreaker question. But to start off with, TJ, we're going to start with you. What's the craziest hurricane memory that you have? Kid, adult, claims or not?
Okay, so I have not had an actual experience, direct experience with the hurricane. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from Chicago, actually. So the majority of my weather-related events and stories will revolve around snow, believe it or not. So the coolest and most interesting story that I have is related to snow and ice. Back in 2014, I was in the Atlanta, Georgia freeze over when the entire North Georgia iced over. Now, I'm from the Midwest, used to driving in snow. I'm thinking, no big deal, just a sheet of ice, take it slow, it's all good. Well, that really wasn't quite the situation, because if you know anything about the metro Atlanta area, especially northern Georgia, the terrain goes up and down. It's very hilly. So when I thought I was stopping at a red light, my car kept going through the intersection. So it what normally takes me 30 minutes, or what would take me a 30-minute commute, it took me 6 hours to get home on that ice. There were no trucks, no plows, no ice, no salt, no nothing. So that was probably the most interesting and scariest experience that I've ever had dealing with the weather event, was the ice over in 2014 when I was in Georgia.
That's awesome. That's scary stuff. 6 hours to get home is stressful enough, but then you can't stop. That is super scary. But I have a follow-up question, and this is my concern.
Okay.
She's from Chicago. She lives in Dallas and she's wearing a Lakers hat. What in the world happened to faithfulness and standing by your team? So TJ, you got a chance to defend yourself. Why are you wearing a Lakers hat? You're from Dallas, or you're from Chicago and now you live in Dallas.
Irving Magic Johnson is why. I am a former athlete, a basketball player, and I patterned my game after Irving Magic Johnson.
Who wants to play TJ and pick up ball right now? Not me. Not me.
And I still got it. So I've been a fan.
Got it.
So two of my favorite players. So probably next time we do this, you'll see me in the 76ers hat because Dr. J is also another one of my idols on the hardwood. So
awesome. I knew there had to be a story there. There always is with TJ. So thank you so much for that. All right. Jason, let's go over to you. Hurricane story. What is the scariest moment or intense moment you've ever had, kid, adult, claims or otherwise?
Chris, I wanted to put my own little spin on this one, just because people like to hear about opportunity and, the combination of preparation and opportunity is where luck comes into play. So this is dial the clock back to Hurricane Ike, 2008, 14 years ago. Was working a good hailstorm in Minnesota. That late summer stuff is usually way up north. That's where the better hailstorms happen, Colorado and Minnesota and such, as the weather pattern gets more summery. And then the hurricane season got going, and Category 3 Hurricane Ike made its way through North Houston. And wouldn't you know, we went from a really, really good hailstorm there in Minneapolis and straight into a hurricane. And it ended up being a Category 2, which is almost like an ideal situation because it just blows off shingles. So it's like a roof and a room and a fence instead of, whole houses, or, there's plenty of trees in houses because it's real woody down there. But it was the opportunity of a lifetime just because of just the amount of work that needed to be done. And of course, the rates they pay to have it done whenever the demand is high is pretty good. So that was my favorite. And I guess the funniest thing about it was they were evacuating Houston. So we were heading south on I-45, and northbound I-35 was jammed. Southbound, there was only a few vehicles. So it was like, kind of, what are we getting ourselves into here?
It was all adjusters southbound, adjusters and restoration contractors southbound, maybe a few power trucks.
Opportunities.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. Matt, over to you. I know you've got to have something up your sleeve.
Yeah. So craziest hurricane. Well, I mean, usually hurricanes are pretty crazy in general, but I think I had one on Hurricane Katrina where it was a mobile home that was up, 5 or 6 feet off the ground with I don't really do flood, so I don't know all that flood stuff. But there was, during Katrina, there was a lot of stuff about the wind versus water stuff. And I went to this lady's house, and she had, was sitting in her living room, and she was kind of overweight. She had a little TV dinner stand, like a little tin thing that your grandma's got, where it's like, oh, everybody's coming over and we're gonna watch a movie, and everybody's got their little TV stand things. She had one of those sitting next to her chair with a 38 special pistol sitting on it, right, with just within reach. And she told me the story. I had to deny her claim because it was all water, but I'm trying to be cool sitting there in the chair, and she said that she rode out the storm. And she's like, we started to get concerned when we could see into the water through the sliding glass door, and it was starting to come in through the wall sockets and everything else, and TV was floating around the room. There's a water line around the room. And we just sat here, and power went out, and we just sat here and just talked. I was like, oh, okay, well, let's try to figure out how I'm going to extract myself out of the room without getting shot. But a lot of times in those situations, they already know because they got prepped by somebody like the agent or whatever. But that was, seeing a pistol sitting there, just like, why is that there? I mean, what could she possibly need to say with that other than, I hope that the adjuster does what I want him to do. So, but and on that particular storm, you guys probably remember, I mean, there was some people that got shot. I was not one of them, thankfully.
Yeah, that counts as intense, I think. I think that works. I think that goes without saying, that qualifies. All right, Brad, over to you. Mr. Kentucky. You get a lot of hurricanes there. So what is
Yeah.
your best hurricane story?
Actually, no hurricanes in Kentucky, lots of tornadoes. Gosh, even worked a tornado here within the year. But I actually went down just a couple of days after Hurricane Katrina hit. I went down, initially, I went down to just tarp roofs and ended up in Gulfport, Mississippi, running a Bobcat. Eventually, I was there for 6 weeks. Eventually, ended up in New Orleans, but we stayed at the naval base there in Gulfport, and that was, it just blew my mind because we FEMA set up there. I mean, their headquarters. It looked like a military operation. Red Cross came in, and they came in on tour buses, which was pretty neat. But anyway, just how FEMA set up. I mean, this naval base was full of adjusters, cleanup, crews. I mean, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people. And just, they set up a kitchen, they set up a laundromat, they set up showers. It was unreal. I had never seen anything of that nature, that undertaking. But it was, I mean, it just somebody had already thought some things through, and it was pretty awesome to see, and immediately how people began to go to work. Of course, back then, I didn't know what an adjuster was, but I probably bumped into quite a few adjusters as I was running that Bobcat, for sure. But it was a sight to see. It was unreal.
That's cool. So my quick story is growing up in North Carolina, we get hurricanes, but it's like the remnants of hurricanes, right? We're like in the middle of the state, the sand hills. So by the time the hurricane gets to us, it's not really a big deal. But occasionally they do kind of come in intense. And we lived on, it's around 5 acres, all pine all over the place. And we ended up having 16 trees fall down around our house. One of them almost landing on the roof, like all pushed up against the windows and everything. And we were really scared. My mom was scared that we might, one of her kids might not make it through the night because of a tree. So that was a pretty intense night for me as a kid. I don't even know how old I was, but for me, that's the most intense feeling I've ever had, is like I'm hearing trees falling down. They're all around. And one almost hit our roof already. So like, am I really about to get crushed by a tree as a kid? That was my intense story. So now that we've talked about hurricanes and things we've experienced from claims and otherwise, what are some things people need to do to be ready? And I'm going to put Matt up first, since he's our special guest here today, and we've kind of made him last to middle the rest of the time. So Matt, what's something you pass on to everybody? We're in your studio, you get first dibs. What do people need to do to get ready for this and future hurricane seasons?
Well, I would say get your mind right about it. When I went on my first hurricane, I had already been an adjuster for a few years, and so I was like, I'd done a bunch of hail, and like Jason said earlier, it's like most working independent adjusters are they're usually working something else when the hailstorm hits. And so I was a little bit surprised the first hurricane I went on, the extent of the destruction when you see it in person, when I pulled into, town, and the entire front side of the Walmart or the Home Depot or the big box stores, it's blown in. You could see straight out the back of the store from the road. And they, obviously the Army Corps of Engineers or whoever does that stuff had cleared the roads out, but the roads are full of cars and debris and boats and pieces of houses and clothes and trash and stuff. All the windows on Taco Bell are out, and everything is covered in like dirt and like just debris and stuff like sticking to the sides. And you don't really like anticipate the actual like physical feeling that you get when you go into a place where your modern infrastructure is not there anymore, and everything looks like a zombie apocalypse movie without the zombies. I would say be prepared that you don't need to just know Xactimate. You don't need to just have gone through some class somewhere or gotten, X number of licenses or whatever, and like taken a thing. That you're also going to have to deal with the lack of modern infrastructure. I know that Verizon and all those companies, they work pretty fast to get they'll do temporary towers and stuff to get the cell phone service, and they usually have a backup relatively quickly. But it may be that you have to stay 2.5 hours away from the area because there's no hotels, or all the hotels that are available are filled up with refugees, people kicked out of the area by the National Guard or whatever. So I would say build that into your planning. Understand that time management is as critical as everything else. If you've got good time management and you're weak in other places, you're probably going to be okay. Anticipate long drives. Anticipate having to bring a bunch of water and a sack lunch. I wouldn't say be filling up with gas and having gas cans and stuff hanging off your car like you're some sort of like a Mad Max truck or whatever, because you don't have to go that far to find gas. But it is a consideration, and I would say be ready for 16-hour days, and a lot of that time is going to be in the car and on the phone, and not just like, well, I'm just going to be scoping and writing all day long for 16 hours. So you're going to be doing lots of stuff all day long.
Awesome. I'm going to throw it over to Jason here. And Jason, we're going to follow because obviously Matt's coming at it from a property perspective. He's thinking through those long hours, those things, whereas TJ and Brad might be coming at it from a different perspective. So I want to stay on this theme though, on thinking of it from a property perspective. And to lead you off though, I think it's important for the viewer, the listener, to think through this. How long after the storm do typically adjusters get deployed to an area? Like, how long does that typically take? Hurricane Katrina comes in, on a Thursday or whatever. How long till Pilot, Alacrity, and all these companies are putting boots on the ground? What's that time frame? So we kind of have that built into this concept of like, okay, how much time do I have to prepare before I have to be on the ground?
Okay, Chris. First of all, just for like an acute example, the adjuster needs to have their hardware, which is their tools, computer, the tools for the job, the software, meaning they need to have their software in their computer just completely ready to function and to process claims, have your memberships ready, have your macros ready, have your diaries, everything ready to go. And then, of course, your necessities. And that's the basic stuff, that it would be nice to have at least a week's worth of stocks. And you see some adjusters who do that. But the broader question, Chris, you were asking is, what's the timeline look on a major hurricane? Katrina may be a poor example just because of the damage that occurred to the dam on Pontchartrain during hurricane and led to that multi-week flooding situation. The sister hurricane to that was Rita, so I can give you an example on that one. The National Guard, a lot of trees were down in the southeast Texas, of course, the real woody area, and the National Guard let the adjusting group in about 2 weeks afterwards. That's whenever they were letting those who evacuated come back and that type of stuff. And it was a tough situation because the Katrina evacuees, of course, were there as well. But for us at the adjusting company, when we see that thing coming in, we're getting our best people lined up who can write, our best people who can scope, and just getting them prepared by going over process quite a bit. And if you're starting to prepare as it's hitting the coast, I say you're late.
Good one. All right, TJ, over to you. If so the viewer, the listener is thinking, man, I'm going to jump on this next hurricane season, but I'm doing it from behind the powerful mouse. I'm sitting behind the computer. I am at the desk, armchair quarterbacking this thing, making sure whatever role I get called into, I'm ready. What do they need to do to be ready for hurricane season?
Unconventional answer that no one considers. Practice empathy. Understand that the people you're going to come in contact with have sustained losses that they may be never imagined that they would have experienced. I've had experiences where I've talked to, and one particular claim that stands out, 2020 when Louisiana was getting hit back to back to back to back. There was a lady that I talked to maybe 2 weeks before the hurricanes start rolling in. She just buried her husband of 45 years. So she's still dealing with some back end admin, items that, you typically, have to deal with, any type of survivor benefits and just any admin details. And then the home that they shared, raised their family in, gone. Cars, gone. Everything imaginable that connected her to now her deceased spouse, gone. So understand that people's stories may not be that extreme, but tapping into your internal empathy as you're handling the claim and handling the claim with care and handling the customer, the insured, with care as well. That is going to be what will, besides the fact of having knowledge of CCC and having the knowledge to work a claim from front to back, having that empathy, and allowing a person to grieve because they experienced a loss. So I'm going to say one of the most powerful tools, besides having the technical knowledge, is being human and having empathy.
So you said practice it, and I know you were talking like literally applying it, but what are some ways people can start getting in that mindset and literally practicing it beforehand to get ready? Do you have any suggestions?
I tell people that words mean things, right? So empathetic phrases, hypothetically, Chris, you call and say, I lost my boat, I lost, all of my kids' clothes, their toys, or Mr. Stanley, I'm so sorry that you and your family is having this experience. And actually talk them through the process, explain to them what you're doing step by step, because I can't imagine a person who loses all of their material possessions and they have no idea where to even start. So learning soft skill or soft phone phrases, right? And that's something that maybe it comes with practice, as you continue to deal with people. And part of the other empathetic piece is, what if that was you? How would you want someone to speak to you? How would you want someone to explain the process? We can't expect that everyone knows or understands what happens in the claim, especially when we're talking about a large catastrophic event. So how to put yourself on the other side of that? How would you want someone to explain? So for me, what has worked for me is explaining the process, okay, expressing empathy, those soft phrases, make that connection while you're, establishing loss facts, analyzing a total loss, whether it's a house or a car, and then at the end, recapping the conversation, because you obviously are going to give this person a lot of information throughout the claim handling process, and then a strong close to let them know that you care.
Love it. I think Matt's got some to add here.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, which is, all this empathy, I of all the things, I think that's probably the biggest thing. But, one way to sort of practice that I found is to kind of cultivate a personal, like, interior attitude of thinking about somebody else before yourself in every single possible situation, like at home, if you're walking up to the door of the gas station or the restaurant, you're looking behind to see if anybody's there. Does anybody need the door open? If there's somebody, open the door, right? Be always putting somebody else's, what they may need in front of yourself. And then I think that makes the rest of it pretty easier anyway. But you still do have to absolutely cultivate those skills. And it's active, it's not just like, well, I'm just going to be nicer. It's you gotta put yourself in other people's shoes, and it starts with kind of having that attitude, I think.
Good ad. I like that. All right, Brad. Good luck following those up. Your turn.
Yeah.
So, what do people need to do to be prepared for the upcoming hurricane season?
TJ took my answer. All right. So I've not worked a hurricane, but I have worked 3 cat situations already just here in my backyard. The floods in Waverly, Tennessee at the beginning of 21, the tornado that hit at the end of 21, and then we just had a huge hailstorm come through southern Indiana the middle of May this year. And so I was, just by virtue of where I live, I was thrust into a cat situation all 3 times. Of course, the claim load feels, more than what you can handle. And, you go from doing daily to cat claim load type scenario. So I feel like I can speak just a little bit. And that's it. I mean, obviously you have to be, as a business owner, not just as an adjuster / appraiser, but as a business owner, you've got to be on top of your scheduling, even your bookkeeping, because having those things undone or out of order while you're trying to effectively, complete a good estimate, it just wears on you, and it has the potential to really do some negative things. But empathy, I was thinking speed, because I've just been given more claims than I can humanly handle, but having to stop and listen. And I've got some stories that have impacted me for life, especially through the tornado that hit here in Western Kentucky. Won't share those right now. Maybe that can be a whole episode. But what I do want to say from a mentor side, and I've watched this happen a couple of times over the last 2 years that I've been a mentor with IA Path, and it's hard on my heart, because I think this industry, I feel so blessed to be in this industry, and I get excited when a new, man or woman is certified, gets into this industry, and just thinking about the potential, the career potential, even the financial, the income side of it all. But I see new appraisers, brand new, and we post the opportunities, and I'm glad we do that, but they'll jump on that cat opportunity without ever really getting a good idea of what daily claim life looks like. And some people are wired for that. They can handle it. And then there are others that, just because that they're wired more probably for a daily claim pace. But their first taste at the claims world is a cat situation. And then lo and behold, they call you up. Okay, I'm done. I can't do this. And that I guess that's kind of hard on my heart, because, you want to say, listen, this is not everyday life, the cat pace, and just, just people's mindsets and the way people communicate. That's a different world, and, so I guess if someone was listening and they're not yet in this industry, understand that there are all kinds of opportunities, as we've all discussed, whether it's field adjusting, desk adjusting, you've got that, but then you've got all the different scenarios, the different atmospheres, that you will experience. And so we've got people, that come in that are just cat focused, and they do great, because, like Matt alluded, they have a mindset, already, that this is going to be different. And so if you're new coming into this world, I would never discourage you from accepting, the challenge of a cat deployment, but just understand, the cat world and the daily claim world, they're just 2 different worlds. But that's just my input.
Well, I love it. And where I was going to go was, I think especially if you're new, if this is your first hurricane season, you should have a plan of what it is you want to accept and what you don't want to accept. as a deployment opportunity. Because if you come into it, like Brad said, and you're thinking, I want to be a daily claims adjuster or an appraiser, and I just want to sit at home and I want to do 10 to 20 claims a week. And that's just my pace. I want to sleep next to my wife every night. I want to be here for my kids every weekend for their ball games. That's one thing, but then it's a totally different thing when you get thrust into CAT. And it's, if you are good and you survive the first month, you might be there 6 months nonstop, and you might get a chance to go home occasionally, but it's very slim. So you're kind of all in on these CAT opportunities. So you got to know, is this the type of work I want to do? You need to do that research now before it gets here, because you're going to hear of all these monies and fee schedules and opportunities, but all that means jack if you get out there and you bomb because you didn't take Matt's course in property, you didn't take IPAS course for auto, or you don't know how to handle claims and you show up on a desk deployment and you just get run over, because it will happen. More people get cut a lot of times than actually make it. So just because you get an opportunity doesn't mean you're going to make it. You need to know, this is what I want to do, and then prepare for that mentally, license wise, and all the other things that were mentioned. But have that plan. Is this what you want? Is the deployment to a CAT storm this year what you're looking for? And if it comes, great, you go for it. But have that plan now, so you're not accepting something you're not ready for. And then if it is a good opportunity and you think, but I think I could swing it, Chris, then great, but know the risk. Know the risk of what you're accepting, that you could fail, and that's okay, but know that it's a risk and understand and accept that risk, because you're stepping into the big boy game. It's not easy. Not everybody makes it. And so I would say, have a plan. What type of work you want to work, and don't just fall into it necessarily by happenstance without thinking through what this is really going to be like. I think TJ, coming back to you real quick, I'm sure Matt, Jason, and all have things they want to add after all these great answers. Is one of the things you and I rant a lot about is people get into this industry and then they call us and they're like, I don't want to work every day. And we're like, what the freak did you think you were getting into? Like, yeah, I don't understand. Like, we can say this because we're not talking to anyone particularly, but when we hear that, we're like, where'd you get your information? Like, understand what you're getting into. So TJ, do you have anything to add on that? I know that's a passion of yours. So go ahead. If you have something to add, and then everybody else, you can add something as we wrap this up.
I'm not sure if my response will be the most appropriate or family friendly. So I might want to say, only because I get some of the weirdest phone calls and emails. I think one of the myths about this industry is the money, right? So people get into it. Of course, we all want to make money, but that's the driver. And I've learned from Mr. Stanley himself is, if your goal is 6 figures, that is a horrible goal. This is a marathon and not a sprint. For those of you who don't know, I've been on the same deployment since September of 2020. Started out CAT, total loss, behind the desk. Now I'm doing liability. But just understanding just what exactly is it? What is your goal? Okay, so making money. If you take the money off the table, what's in it for you? And that's going to determine how well or how poorly you do in this line of work.
Jason, I know you got to follow up. I see your hand, you're twitching. You got to say something. Go ahead. Unmute yourself and add your final thoughts.
Chris, it's all been said, man. This is a great panel today.
Matt, any final thoughts?
I do, and it kind of goes back to relationship building, and again, we sort of touched on this at the beginning. If you're like a year or two into your career and you're working a deployment in Minnesota, and Hurricane Kevin rolls in and he's gonna just like mow down all these states or whatever. If it were me, I'm probably gonna stay in Minnesota, and if I'm working dailies, I'm probably definitely going to be staying home, because everybody else is going to take off and my workload is going to go up, and that's going to help, because my firms still have those relationships. They still have those contractual agreements. They got to still do that hailstorm. They still got to do the daily claims that are coming in. So if I'm the guy, Johnny on the spot, it's Superman is swooping in and say, hi, I'll be here. And they remember that. And it's a good relationship building tool. I mean, you might miss the Hurricane Irma $100,000 months, But how often does that happen?
Talking about like rolling a Yahtzee versus playing it safe with a 3 of a kind people. Sometimes you can stay in the game longer, and that is what TJ is referencing. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so I think to close out Matt's thought, and I'm Brad, if you got final thoughts, I'll roll it over to you, is that because I wanted to say it, but I didn't think we had time, but we're here now, so we're doing it, is that finish your deployments. If you accept a deployment, finish it. If you're in Minnesota, finish it. Don't bail to go somewhere else. Don't bail because of better fee schedules, all those things. And what Matt was saying about the daily claims, Kagan Blackburn, he's a graduate of iPath, but he's a self-made awesome dude in this industry, and he's on the property side. And how he really got established long-term was he did a few cats, but then when everybody ran to one of the hurricanes, he stayed behind in Oklahoma City, and he became the guy. And he still is. And he doesn't have to chase if he doesn't want to. He can stay at home. So if you want to do daily claims, think that through. Think that through, because that might be the very opportunity, not to run to Louisiana or Florida, but maybe to stay home and say, hey, I know everybody's running there. I'm willing to run daily claims here in Nebraska or wherever you're at.
Mhm.
And that might be the shot you're looking for. So Brad, any final thoughts as we close out this episode? I know we could go for like 3 hours on this.
Sure. Yeah. I just, and we this is a huge industry. Thousands upon thousands of people are in this industry. At the same time, it is such a small world. And if one leader in this industry finds out that you are dependable, that you're honest, you're a person of your word, it's amazing how that, I don't know how it gets communicated, but it's amazing how it does. And it just trickles throughout, the ripple effect in the industry. I don't know how that works, but it exists. And so, as a new appraiser, you might be thinking you're only dealing with one firm, even one individual. But, I just want to encourage you as a new adjuster, new appraiser, it's a small world, so.
And the
Do good.
reverse is also true. If you do bad, everybody finds out somehow, some way. All right. Until next episode, everybody, keep walking your path and claiming your life, and get out there, especially we're hurricane season. It is claim time. Thanks for being here.